In Hamlet, the pursuit of justice through revenge leads to the corruption of morality, failure of true justice, and perpetrates a cycle of revenge leading to the Danish kingdom's inevitable downfall and proving that justice must be directed by morality, not retribution.
Hey Thomas, what do you think happens to your personality when you become obsessed with revenge and lose sight of justice?
I think you'd become morally corrupt.
You're correct. Bring me to our first point in the seminar. Revenge disguised as justice causes moral corruption, leading to the downfall of the Danish kingdom in Hamlet. At the start of the play, the ghost, Hamlet's late father, tells Hamlet he must murder Claudius. Although the ghost wants his revenge, he makes it clear that this is for the sake of Denmark, not him. He warns Hamlet that he must not corrupt his mind and focus on saving Denmark, saying,
"But however thou pruest this act, take not thy mind."
Author Paul Gottschalk explains the situation perfectly, saying, the ghost is concerned with the spiritual health of his nation, his son, and his queen. He shows no private thirst to see Claudius suffer what Claudius has made him suffer. He is concerned with restoration, not retaliation. Hamlet does not listen and is absorbed by revenge as the play progresses, drastically changing his character. At first, he was terrified of murdering Claudius, but as he became more and more morally corrupt, he got over it. "Come, the croaking raven doth bellow for revenge," says Hamlet. This character change is also demonstrated through the murders of Polonius, Guildenstern, and Rosencrantz. Only once Hamlet is morally corrupt can he commit these acts, leading to the end of the novel where he and Laertes fatally poison each other and Hamlet finally murders Claudius, causing the complete fall of the Danish kingdom. Paul Gottschalk provides another great insight about Hamlet to support my point, saying, under the pressure of his unfinished task and his sense of personal corruption, he commits himself to villainy.
Wow, it's crazy to see how Hamlet's character becomes morally corrupt over the play. What happened to Laertes? He seemed so normal at the start of the play.
Laertes is another perfect example of moral corruption from revenge, leading to the downfall of the Danish kingdom. Shakespeare uses Laertes as an extreme example of Hamlet, someone who becomes entirely corrupted by revenge. Laertes is normal at the novel's start, but he completely changes when he returns from France and learns about his father's death. Instead of searching for justice, he longs for revenge and wants to murder Hamlet above all else. Shakespeare has Laertes react this way to show the destructive nature of revenge. Author Richard Buescher says, using Laertes allows Shakespeare to explore the reckless and aesthetic revenge, but this time with a victim about whom the audience cares. Laertes' corrupt morality leaves him in a vulnerable position to be manipulated by Claudius, causing Laertes to kill Hamlet and lead to Denmark's demise.
Hamlet's story reminds me of a TV show I've watched. I think it's a guy called Heisenberg.
Great insight, Giuseppe. You're thinking of Walter White from Breaking Bad. The director of Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, tells a lesson about moral corruption, similar to the one Shakespeare tells in Hamlet. Walter White and Hamlet both start their stories with dark but justifiable intentions. Walter hopes to provide for his family financially before succumbing to his terminal cancer by using his skills as a chemist to produce drugs. Hamlet hopes to kill Claudius to avenge his father's death and to save his country of Denmark. Both characters act for a just purpose, but their means corrupt their morality, leading to their demise. At first, Hamlet is scared to murder anyone, and Walter will only murder to protect himself. Then Hamlet murders Polonius with no remorse, and Walter uses violence to manipulate those around him for his benefit, such as poisoning of a child named Brock to manipulate his drug partner Jesse. Violence pushes both of these characters into more significant moral decay, creating a vicious cycle as both characters continue to commit unnecessary murders after these events. This cycle ends with the collapse of the characters' worlds. Hamlet's obsession for revenge leads to the death of every Danish leader, including himself, causing the fall of the Danish kingdom to Norway. Walter's greed and moral decay lead to him destroying his relationship with his family and his partner Jesse. The moral corruption of both Hamlet and Walter White leads to the destruction of what they were initially fighting for, resulting in tragic endings.
As many people lose their morality in their desire to achieve true justice, it is this violence and revenge that leads to a failure in achieving true justice. Well, Oakley, the meaning of justice is just behavior, and the treatment alongside administrative authority. In the play Hamlet, this just behavior is totally disregarded, and justice quickly turns into revenge. Hamlet continuously ponders avenging his father's death, as seen in the lines, "Haste me to know it, that I am with wings as swift as meditation, or the thoughts of love may sweep to my revenge." Hamlet cowardly avoids killing Claudius, constantly battling his consciousness as he is obsessed to give Claudius the same fate as his father, but doesn't know how. Instead of solving the situation justly, Hamlet continues to delay the situation, as shown when Hamlet says, "Now might do it, Pat. Now he is a praying, and now I'll do it. And so he goes to heaven. And so I am revenged. That would be scanned. A villain kills my father, and for that I sole son do the same villain send to heaven." As a result of Hamlet's stubbornness and the delays, a number of events occur that not only lead to the death of the innocent, but to Hamlet as well. This leads to the destruction of Denmark and the eventual rule of the Norwegians. Although Hamlet eventually gets his revenge by killing Claudius, it was through rage and anger, rather than a moral and lawful practice. This proves that justice has been completely destroyed, and all acts that drive the plot have been completely taken over by violence. This allows the reader to understand that the play is trying to suggest that all actions should be carried out morally, and revenge only leads to failure and more need for justice. This is further proven by a critical analyst, Harold Skolsky, who says, "For a vengeance beyond the grade has nothing in common with classic penal justice. It is irreconcilable with the straightforward evening of scores prescribed by the Old Testament. The revenger of the blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him. No lying in wait here for the murderer's soul." This quote by Harold Skolsky demonstrates Hamlet's pursuit of vengeance as it goes beyond moral or legal acts, becoming darker. Instead of justice being used by proper means, it is stated that it is completely disregarded, which eventually leads to the further downfall and eventual destruction of everything.
What do you exactly mean by this, Giuseppe? So Giuseppe, don't you think that Hamlet is deeply connected to the movie Lion King?
Oakley, you know Miss Brooks said we can't use that. It's a direct comparison to Hamlet. I'm not going to use that. I thought bigger. I thought better. And just give me a second to let me get in character. Voila, and this is what you call a costume. When connecting this to modern media, there's a certain show that comes to mind. Dexter, a well-known show, has many parallels to Hamlet and its failure to finding justice. Dexter, growing up, dealt with the murder of his mother, watching her die at the age of 3. He later was adopted and grew to have much anger. His adopted father taught him to only kill those who deserve it. Eventually, Dexter became a mass killer, killing many other serial killers. By the end of the show, Dexter is shot but miraculously survives, moving from his home in Miami to a new place, living under a new identity. The theme of failure of justice is prominent in Dexter as it is in Hamlet, and the two share many similarities. Despite Dexter's stepfather telling him to kill only bad people, similarly to how Hamlet's father told him to kill a bad person, which is Claudius, Dexter evolves far beyond this. Dexter begins to kill for sport, following the same process for each victim, showing them, causing him to feel like he is in full control. Although, when he first begins, it is just instinct, Dexter begins to believe that what he is doing is just, as he is taking out other criminals who have escaped legal troubles. However, by the end of the show, his need to kill outweighs the morality and causes those around him, like his family, to be affected, similarly to how Hamlet's family was affected. Dexter no longer kills to find justice, but because he has to. Although he thinks what he is doing is right, he is already in the police force, so there are many other ways for him to do something to find justice, similarly to how Hamlet could have done many other things to find justice.
That was pretty good, but can you connect it to modern literature?
Yes, actually, I do. Ever heard of an author named Stephen King?
I love his work. I read all his books.
Perfect. This will make this even better. Carrie is about a child with a religious crazed mother and is continuously bullied. Carrie, one day, got her period and got tampons thrown at her by these students, who later got in trouble. But the ringleader, Chris, doesn't think they should be punished. We later find out that Carrie has telekinetic powers. At prom, she is crowned prom queen with her date, but Chris comes up with a plan to pour pig blood on her. This plan is carried out and caused Carrie to go on a killing frenzy, killing almost every student and teacher. When she flees to her house, her mom also tries to kill her, thinking that she is possessed. Although she is stabbed, she kills her mother, but dies shortly after. The connection to Hamlet demonstrated as both deal with trauma and try to use revenge to find justice. However, the justice is never found, as it causes a ripple effect of many people's unnecessary death and even the death of the protagonist, showing that true justice can never be found through violence and always should be found through moral and justful things.
Revenge. Now, what does that mean? Perpetual revenge is an ongoing cycle of retaliation, a continuous seeking of vengeance. It is described as a cycle because each act of revenge leads to the next. This makes it near impossible to break said cycle. The cycle could stem from personal feuds or historical conflicts. A simpler way to look at it would be the domino effect. One event leads to another, which leads to another, and so forth.
But Thomas, how does that relate to Hamlet?
Well, in Hamlet, there are sequential stages that lead to Hamlet's death and the demise of the Danish kingdom. The antecedent event that set off the chain reaction is the death of King Hamlet at the hands of Claudius, thereby engendering Hamlet's desire for revenge. In fact, it was the ghost of his father whom he saw in the graveyard whispering unspoken thoughts to Hamlet, the ghost revealing secrets to his father's murder and Claudius's intentions. Revenge, his foul and most unnatural murder. Shakespeare, Act 1, Scene 5, line 30. The ghost is instilling the idea of revenge, commanding that Hamlet must murder his uncle Claudius. The next stage is the accidental murder of Polonius. Hamlet believes Claudius is behind a tapestry, spying on him in his mother's chamber. He blindly stabs through the curtain and kills Polonius. Laertes discovers this and is filled with revenge. And so have I a noble father lost, a sister driven into desperate terms, whose worth, if praises may go back again, stood challenger on mount of all the age for her perfections, but my revenge will come. Act 4, Scene 7, line 27 to 31. Laertes lost his father, and the death has made his sister, Ophelia, go crazy and commit suicide because of the erratic actions of her loved one, Hamlet. For that, Laertes must take revenge and kill Hamlet. Here, the reader can see that the chain reaction or domino effect is set off by one event, the murder of King Hamlet. Because of the murder of his father, Hamlet in turn murders Polonius, meant to be Claudius. This then leads to Ophelia committing suicide. Claudius accidentally murdering Gertrude with poison meant for Hamlet. In turn, Laertes murders Hamlet with a poison-tipped sword with the help of Claudius, and in his final actions, Hamlet murders Laertes and Claudius. One must not forget the hesitation and cowardice that Hamlet had in killing Claudius. He made excuse after excuse as to not commit murder. Literary critic Retta also points out Hamlet's cowardice. One must not forget that if Hamlet had taken revenge immediately, as required by the medieval code of honor, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, Ophelia, Polonius Laertes, and perhaps even Hamlet himself would have survived the events of the drama. Without Hamlet's cowardice, the captivating domino effect would not have occurred. The revenge that Hamlet takes upon Claudius beckons back to an old moral law, lex talionis, which is Latin for the law of retaliation. This terrible law demands vengeful justice by stating an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Claudius will come to feel the vengeance demanded by this law. Claudius killed King Hamlet, therefore Hamlet must kill Claudius. Hamlet killed Polonius, therefore Laertes must kill Hamlet. Literary critic Andrews states, this is the reason for the enormous emotional appeal of the revenge play in its pure and savage form, before didacticism sets in. The implacable emotional logic of blood for blood is at the heart of revenge tragedy.
Lex talionis sounds so familiar, yet I can't quite place my finger on it. What's an example of the law in modern day literature?
Well, there are thousands of examples. Perhaps the most famous in modern day literature is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson, where protagonist Lisbeth Salander takes revenge on her legal guardian, Nils Björman, who sexually assaulted and raped her. Instead of taking legal actions, which she had previously done and did not work, she uses personal retribution and directly mirrors her guardian's crimes. She, in turn, tortures Björman and blackmails him into submission. This is an example of lex talionis because of the personal retribution and the desire for an eye for an eye. Well, as we wrap up, Shakespeare's emphasis on perpetual revenge is so important to the overall play. Without perpetual revenge, the play would not be enthralling, and the play could have ended after the murder of King Hamlet and not gone past the first page.